everybody. My name is Will Haskell, your Democratic State Senator. Listen, we're reaching the point in this campaign where I realize I'm not going to be able to make it to every front door and talk to every voter before Election Day. Now that November 3rd is just a few days away, I wanted to lay out my closing argument. I've spent the last 2 years in Hartford fighting to lower the cost of healthcare, to right our fiscal ship, and to make sure that our state's workforce is prepared for both the challenges and the opportunities of the 21st century. You haven't seen any negative campaign mailers from us, any attack ads. You haven't seen me talking just about what I'm against. You've seen me talking about what I'm for. I'm for clean air and clean water. I'm for investments in our transportation infrastructure here in Fairfield County. And I'm for a state government that always has the back of small business owners. I hope that you'll have my back on November 3rd. If you've got an absentee ballot at home, return it as soon as possible by dropping it in an absentee ballot drop box outside of Town Hall. If you're going to be voting on Election Day, the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah, he's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone now. Piss off!
That's the one, because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Kant was a real pissant. It was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. P&G now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Hello, everybody. Greetings. It is November 3rd. It is Election Day. I hope you are well. It is a big day. Yeah, of course, I'm a Biden-Harris supporter, and I'm exercising my democratic right not only to vote, but to talk about stepping up, being an activist, being proactive, not just sitting on the sidelines and complaining, but actually trying to be a part of change. But today, regardless of your political leanings or affiliation, you're going to get an opportunity to see a little glimpse of what the future looks like. And today will fill you with hope, positivity, and optimism. And we all need it. We just all need it. I guarantee you, when you're finished listening to Will, you will share this point of view with me. You just will. I mean, pun not intended. Well, let's just do birthdays, because people are still having birthdays. You know, Anne Handley, who I think is going to be on the show soon enough. I can't wait for that to take place. Carl Johnson, Brian Person, the original Brian Person. And then on LinkedIn, there's Tim Brown and Nisha Joseph, David Denning, and Roger Thaxton. Happy birthday to all of you. It is the election, of course, today. You're going to hear from Will Haskell shortly. But tomorrow, especially if your nerves are frayed, if you're anxious, Lodro Winsler is coming in, and he's going to teach me and teach all of you guys how to meditate. So we're going to have a live meditation love fest. We're going to end the week talking about love. Moshe Engelberg will talk to us about the power of love. So we will get through this week together, I guarantee you. But as I was saying today, I get to sit down with Will Haskell. He is our Connecticut State Senator, but he's also, as I call him, the boy wonder. I mean, he is barely old enough to vote. He is old enough to vote, but he just represents the future. And as I said to you, you're gonna see that. You're gonna share his insights. We're gonna share in that together. I thought I would actually walk you through some interesting data points. And these data points, I mean, this is amazing, right? So if you look at the share of voters that are casting ballots by mail, over the past, from 1996 to 2016, that number has been steadily increasing. And it was up to 20.9% in 2016. Now, in 2016, 55.5% of the VAP, which is the voting adult population voted. So that works out to be 139 million. 139 million out of 250 million. I'm always amazed by this number. I'm always amazed by the fact that 45%, 1 in every 2 voters basically just choose not to vote. What can be more powerful than your vote? So I try to do the math, and about, I guess, 20.9% of 139 million is about 29 million. Well, today we found out that we hit 100 million. 100 million. That's, I mean, if you do the math, 3 times the amount that actually voted. It's unbelievable. It's 72% of 2016's total. And of course, it's COVID related. We all get that. We all know that. We all recognize that. But wow, that's we're going to see record turnout today. We are going to see record turnout today. We are going to crush 139 million. That is for sure. We'll probably hit 150 or 160 million. That's got to fill you as well with hope, positivity, and optimism. Well, we're going to get to our seated soliloquy, but before we do that, let's just see who is in there and who is watching. Tom Morris, 5 minutes late and glad to be here. Tom, you came just in time for the seated soliloquy. And Stanley Berman is here, who also indicated that it's Colin Kaepernick's birthday. How appropriate. How unbelievably appropriate that it's Colin Kaepernick's birthday. A man that certainly, I would say, has stood up for justice and equality and inclusivity, but he didn't. He took a knee for it as well. So that's pretty cool. Well, today's soliloquy is called leadership. And it's something that I feel that needed to be said today. And let's just, let's go for it. Being president doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you are. Now, those words came from former First Lady Michelle Obama. Today is election day. And perhaps for the first time in 4 years, and yes, this actually includes the fact we couldn't come together to unite over COVID. But today, for the first time in 4 years, both sides agree on one thing. This is the most important election in US history. To me, this is a referendum on whether this country is past, present, or future focused. It's also historically a referendum on the current leader. Every election of an incumbent is very much a vote of confidence on their first term in office, their track record. It shouldn't be a subjective interpretation. It shouldn't be spun by the pundits, and yet it is, and it has been. Here's what I'd like to offer up today, and it's as much about leadership in general as it is about politics. Donald Trump has not strayed from his argument about building the greatest economy everyone or anyone has ever seen in the history of the world, with record job creation and unemployment that nobody has ever seen before. But then in came the plague from China, which they shouldn't have allowed to leave, etc., etc., etc. You know the spiel. But here's the mistake he made. And quite frankly, I'm surprised no one ever picked up on this. Great leaders are not made during good times, times of prosperity, times when nothing happens. They are created, forged, and defined by crisis, through crisis, because of crisis. You don't become a leader because you were voted in. You earn the right to be called a leader explicitly through your actions. And while this isn't always about adversity, it almost always becomes the most binary indication of greatness and potential realized, and a direct and explicit reflection of success versus failure, competence versus ineptitude, ability to rise up and rise to the occasion, or be completely exposed for lack of experience, expertise, and ability, dominated and isolated by the occasion. Great leaders do not lay blame. Great leaders do not lament their bad luck. Great leaders don't complain. Great leaders do not pass the buck. The buck stops with them. Great leaders are accountable to their constituents and by their actions. Now, we will see within the next 24 plus hours whether the rest of America agrees with me. Go vote. Well, don't go vote right now. Go vote after the show, and then go vote. There still is time. Well, I thought maybe we may as well go straight into the quote of the day. And as far as the quote of the day is concerned, this is the quote. So I'm going to ask you who said this quote. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Well, I'm going to let you figure out who said that. You can put it into the comments and we'll see whether, in fact, you were right or not. Now it's time to welcome my guest, Mr. Will Haskell, Senator Will Haskell. And let me read you a little bit of background. Oh, and I should actually let you know that Will is not in the studio with me. I actually sat down with him yesterday. And so this was recorded about 12, well, not 12, but let's say about 18 hours ago. And you will see that interview in 7 parts. He is actually at the polls right now with Representative Jim Himes, and they're both up for re-election as well. But you're going to get, I promise you, it is near live, if you will. State Senator Will Haskell was elected in November 2018 to represent the 26th State Senate District. He was born in 1996. He is the youngest member of the General Assembly. He's just 24. Senator Haskell attended the Westport Public Schools, just like my boys. And it was there that he drew national attention to the issue of cyberbullying in Staples High School. He then went on to Georgetown University, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. While at Georgetown, Senator Haskell helped launch the Free Speech Project, dedicated to monitoring and protecting freedom of expression. In Connecticut, Senator Haskell developed a passion for improving our criminal justice system after working with Connecticut's Office of the Public Defender, where he helped connect low-income defendants with social workers and attorneys. With an eye towards Connecticut's future, Senator Haskell is determined to help build a state that is affordable and appealing to every generation. Please help me welcome Senator Haskell, and we'll do this with part 1 of our interview. Well, I'm excited to bring him onto the show. So without further ado, I don't even know, do I say Senator Haskell? Do I say, what do I call you?
No, please.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. It is election day today, officially.
Well, I'm so grateful for being on the show. Thank you for having me. And, especially important this election day, I think, to try to spread the word and get out the vote. So I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity to come on and say a few words.
Yeah, well, you are getting out the vote right now. You're with Jim Himes, and we hope he is re-elected as well. In fact, I'm sure he will be. Well, I wanted to go back to the beginning, which is, we were just talking in the green room about your college days and high school, etc. Tell us about your story. What made you want to get into politics?
Well, I'll be very honest. I was always interested in politics. My father and I used to go to the New Hampshire primary and meet candidates. And I remember meeting a senator named Barack Obama in a crowded gymnasium. But I never expected to run for office right after I graduated from college. I thought I was going to go maybe to law school or do something else. But I'll be perfectly frank, I woke up the morning after Donald Trump's election just absolutely devastated. I was one of those people who went to bed early on election night. I thought that it was in the bag for Hillary Clinton. And, having grown up under the Obama administration, I think like a lot of other members of my generation, we sort of felt like progress was inevitable. Maybe we'll fight over the pace of progress, but at least we're all heading in the same direction. And suddenly, like a splash of cold water on the face, we woke up that morning to President Donald Trump and realized that actually we weren't heading in the same direction. And there were many folks who were very explicitly trying to move us backwards. Their campaign slogan was "Making America Great Again," fundamentally looking towards the past and not the future. So long story short, I realized that the fight against Donald Trump had to start at the state and local level, that Donald Trump was going to be president over the next 4 years, but that states could be the first line of defense when Washington came to take away our rights. And I looked at who represented me in town hall and in the state capitol. I thought the folks at town hall were doing a great job. I thought I had a great state representative. And then when I looked at my state senator, It was somebody who had been in office for longer than I'd been alive, somebody who thought that our gun violence prevention regulations went too far. I thought we didn't do enough to stand up to the NRA. Anyways, there's a million other areas where we disagreed, but when I found out that nobody else was going to run against her, I thought maybe I didn't have a shot at winning, but it's bad for democracy when incumbents go unchallenged, and we should all be challenged every 2 years to defend our voting record and to answer to our constituents. So I decided to come back to my hometown and to start knocking on doors.
And in this particular case, the lack of experience, due to your age, actually was a good thing. I mean, the reason why you got into politics was another kind of lack of experience, but maybe the bad kind of lack of experience, where that's replaced by, I always say that the most dangerous people in the world are the people that think they know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And at least with youthful, being younger and being less experienced, I'm pretty sure it was the opposite, right? Which is you knew exactly what you didn't know, and were able to kind of triangulate against that.
That's true. I was terrified when I first went door knocking that people were going to laugh at me. The idea of somebody who was 22 years old running for the state Senate, I thought that they would just not even take my candidacy seriously. And what I found was, sure enough, at every door, the very first question I got every time was, how old are you? And initially, I was so sheepish in my answer. And I said, well, I'm 22, but here's my plan to address legacy pension obligations. Here's my plan to improve transportation. But then what I realized after a few hundred doors is actually, to your point, being young isn't a liability. It's an asset in politics right now. We need folks in our generation to step up to the plate. And actually, voters of every generation, whether they were 18 years old and this was their first election, or whether they were 80 years old and it was their, 40th election, they were so excited to see our generation actually stepping off of the sidelines and getting involved. So I came to realize that, to your point, being a young person in politics, it's not necessarily a downside. It can also be an upside to try to bring a different perspective into the state capitol.
Two fantastic lessons. Number one, turning a perceived weakness into a strength. But really, at the end of the day, substance wins. Content wins. And Nelson Mandela also wins. So does Scott Monty. Yes, it was Nelson Mandela, Madiba, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. And good opportunity to say welcome to my mom, who's watching in South Africa, biting her nails at the prospect of who will win this election. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first segment. I love that already, and it sets the tone for how a perceived weakness can be turned into a strength. The other thing that I really loved is that substance wins. So yeah, whether you're too old or too young, we discuss ageism on the show a lot. What really came out of this was Will was able to always respond with the issues. And it was content strategy. It was substance that won at the end of the day. Now, in the next segment, we actually get that generational perspective, thinking about, well, I won't tell you exactly what issues, but I think the unique perspective that someone who is a Generation Z, a Zoomer, brings to the table and is able to actually impact our thinking, our legacy thinking, with a unique original perspective, to me, was very, very refreshing. So let's roll that film, shall we? Now, you haven't always done very well in terms of grades. In fact, you very proudly on your Facebook page indicated how proud you were about a certain grade, this grade. You proudly bragged about how you got an F rating from the NRA. So good for you. For you.
Thank you. I was worried about where that question was going at first. I'm really proud to have an F from the NRA. I think that this is a great example of where a generational perspective really plays an important role. My generation is the first to have school shooting drills as frequently as we experience fire drills. Yeah. I remember sitting in my high school cafeteria on the morning of the Sandy Hook shooting. And I know when I talk to high school students and college students that when they hear a loud noise in the hallway, they can't possibly focus on what's on their desk, what they're supposed to be learning, because they're consumed by this fear about where they would hide in the event that their school became the next site of a tragedy. So our generation just sees this issue differently. And when I saw that I got an F from the NRA, I wanted to spread the word. I thought that I wear it like a badge of honor, to be honest.
I'm proud of you for earning that grade. Let's go back to this idea. You spoke about being the first generation to grow up, to live and almost take something that is so abnormal as normal, which is these horrific drills that you have to go through. What do you think the youth, we say youth of today, Generation Z, Zoomers, where are they right now in terms of this continuum of apathy to activism? Are they all like you? Are you the exception to the norm? Or do you believe that there is this movement that is rising up now, and this generation is going to be counted and be accountable and hold their leaders accountable as well?
I think that by far and away, whether they are marching, whether they are posting on Facebook, whether they are bringing their passion into the voting booth, something that I see among my generation is a real urgency, right? There are a lot of people. I'm not the only young person in office. I've gotten to know a lot of young people who decided to run for office because rather than say, oh yeah, we'll deal with climate change one day, they recognized that this wasn't some academic anxiety. This was an existential threat to their continued existence. They know firsthand how hard it is to try to afford a degree in the 21st century. They know why affirmative consent matters because we've seen what it looks like and tragically what it doesn't at parties and gatherings. So our generation does bring that unique perspective. I think that we do a great job of telling the story of our generation on social media. We don't do such a great job of bringing our concerns into the voting booth. I am so hopeful that that is changing today as we speak. The youth voter turnout numbers are through the roof nationally. And I can tell you that here in Connecticut, a few days ago, I was knocking doors in Reading, and I got to a front door, and this had never happened to me before, but an 18-year-old student came to the front door, and she said, oh my gosh, you're Will Haskell. I'm filling out my ballot right now. I mean, it was as I arrived at the front step, and I said, oh my, I'm so grateful to meet you, and I'm grateful that you're voting. And she said, this is my first election ever, and I have been waiting for this election since the morning after the last one. And that opened my eyes to the fact that really young people are incredibly fired up. And there's a whole group of young people who aren't even old enough to vote, but who are still making their voice heard in this election. Our campaign team is made up of 15, 16, 17-year-olds who maybe they're not old enough to go into the voting booth themselves, but they're knocking on doors all day today. They're making calls all for the last 6 months. They're talking to their family, their friends, their neighbors. They're mobilizing and changing the hearts and minds of those who can vote because they want to see a government that actually reflects their priorities.
Well, I happen to know one intern who did work on your campaign, and I know that she has voted already. And
I'm glad to hear it.
And it is a powerful gift, and one as a naturalized citizen, one that I do not take for granted. Now, that intern may or may not be related to me, so I hope she is watching from her safely from her bedroom right now. So Rini is here. She was my unbelievable guest yesterday. My head is still hurting thinking about the incredible conversation. She's saying, hi, Mom. But she also says, I remember having to hide under my desk because of fear of nuclear war. Not the same as a school shooting, but fear-based, just the same. Unbelievable to think about that generational change as well. Tom says, wishing we could all have clones of Will Haskell in our state houses. You see what I mean? I'm telling you, like, you will forget what party you're affiliated to by the end of this interview. And look, I don't want to preempt it, but we're going to find out what Will Haskell's presidential aspirations are. He may or may not make an announcement on the show. So if you are watching on Facebook, please share this right now. And let's just get people to be inspired by this wonderful, wonderful man. You know what I really loved? By the way, Rini, just a comment to you for a second. You said that an amazing thought yesterday, which I'm still ruminating in my mind, which is, you know, when we think about these challenges in the abstract, it doesn't seem real. But suddenly when we can identify them with a name like my Tommy, right? Immigrants are bad, but my Tommy, who you know was born in Mexico and may or may not have come here legally, he's a great guy. And I think it's the same concept, which is when you haven't experienced, God forbid, a school shooting or even to have been, you know, hiding under a desk or going through these drills, it is abstract. So we have to make the abstract concrete. And I just loved how Will was able to talk about this generational change things like affirmative consent and understanding that someday we'll get to climate control. No, someday is this day. Someday is today as well. So what a great story. Well, if you think it's going to get more inspirational, well, then you've come to the right place, because I then sat down with Will and I spoke to him. For me, I'm going to be asking pretty much everyone a four-word question. And you'll find out what that question is now. But specifically, the next segment is on this idea of bipartisan cooperation, unity. How do we bridge the divide? I want to talk about something else that you did recently, but I love this thing about you, Will, which is you went past the Ridgefield Republican town committee, and just popped in. And I mean, this is not just reaching across the aisle. This is just about a lesson in humanity and just decency, which is to, recognize that the people on the other side are members of our community as well. So talk a little bit about just the simple gesture or even symbolic act.
Yeah, it's sort of easy to build walls in politics, especially in a campaign season where it feels like there's so much more that divides us than unites us. But yesterday a few days ago, I was walking with Governor Lamont down Main Street in Ridgefield. We were visiting local businesses, talking about how Connecticut can have their back during this really challenging time. And we happened to walk past the Republican headquarters, and we stopped in to say hello, because we know that with cases on the rise in Connecticut, we are going to have to reforge some unity in order to combat this virus together. And that's true whether we win or we lose on Tuesday. Regardless of the outcome, we're going to have to remember all of the very serious problems that build us together. I was door knocking in Weston last week, and I arrived at a gentleman's front step, and he started yelling at me about Black Lives Matter. He thought it was an anarchist organization. And then he was angry about Hunter Biden. And then he was angry about Hillary's emails and all sorts of things. We disagreed on all of that. But I said, what's an issue that actually keeps you up at night? Something right here in Connecticut that impacts your life. And he said, well, I'm having trouble paying some healthcare bills. He had some pretty serious surgeries recently, and he couldn't pay off those bills. And I talked about the public option plan, which would allow those who work for small businesses and nonprofits to buy into the very same healthcare plan that I enjoy as a member of the legislature. We talked about how insurance lobbyists had come up to Hartford and fought to kill the public option because they know that introducing greater competition into the market will drive down prices for everybody. And at the end of the conversation, we actually found that we agreed on this healthcare solution, that we thought it was time to stand up to the insurance lobbyists and to bring a public option to Connecticut. So even though we watch different news outlets, I'm sure he's a Fox guy and I tend to watch MSNBC, even though there's a lot of partisan noise as we approach Election Day, there's a lot of problems that really require a unity of purpose that are going to bring us all together after Election Day.
And the key phrase, the common phrase there is dialogue. It's just being able to sit down and have a respectful conversation to find the things that unite us versus the things that divide us. And that's exactly what you did.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we solved any earth-shattering problems by stopping into the RTC headquarters, but it demonstrated a willingness to listen. If they win, I want to be of service. And if I win, I hope that I can count on their partnership going forward to try to keep schools open, to try to keep our community healthy during this really difficult time.
I'm asking people a 4-word question, which I think is going to be the most important question that we all ask ourselves, of ourselves and each other. How do we heal?
How do we heal? Such a great question. I think we all have seen it, even within our own families. You probably have an uncle or a friend or a cousin who voted for Donald Trump, and that person isn't fundamentally bad. We're not going to get anywhere in this country by writing them off. We've got to figure out, what were their motives? What economic frustrations were they facing? Why did they feel so left behind that they decided to embrace an agenda and an ideology that was so deeply traumatic and problematic for the rest of us? I don't have a great answer for your question, except to say that I think my 2 years in politics so far have taught me that way too many people in this job spend more time talking than they do listening. And really, it should be the exact opposite. The job of a politician, first and foremost, is to listen and to learn from our constituents. Every day as I drive up to Hartford, it's more than an hour drive, I make calls to constituents and I ask them questions. I learn from them. I get their ideas for the day and the month and the years ahead. I've learned a lot from the people in this district just by shutting up and listening. And I think that whether you're a Democrat, Republican, everybody in politics could spend more time listening. And maybe that's how we heal. That's one idea anyways.
It's a great start. Well, Tom Morris, who is watching right now, you have some competition in terms of becoming a philosopher, or my go-to philosopher, because how philosophical is that? From a 24-year-old, right? This simple truth of God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth, and we should use that in the direct proportion that it was given. Rini said to the earlier segment, the abstract becomes concrete, and it's today. And I love this. Jan actually asked a question. How do you help? Well, I can't answer the question because Will is not actually in the studio with me, but I guess I was able to fake it by wearing the same shirt or sweater that I wore yesterday with him. But Jan, if I fooled you, then I can fool anyone. I love that. I feel vindicated that this format actually works. I will send your question to Will, and he will answer it. He's the kind of guy that will answer it, Jan. So how about that as well? Tom says I can retire now. So there you go. Now that I've replaced you, I don't think you can ever be replaced, Tom, just to be clear. All right. Well, the next segment is interesting, and it actually began by me asking him about, his time in office, his major accomplishments, his biggest regrets, things he wishes he could do over, what his biggest challenges were. And what came out of it was a really surprising insight about how change happens in this country and where it happens. Here's a clue. It doesn't come from top down. You clearly enjoy doing this because you're looking to be reelected. But look back now on your term. What did you learn? What was your biggest triumph? And maybe on the flip side, what is something that you know that you will come back so much wiser and stronger the second time around?
Oh, great question. Connecticut only has a 6-month legislature, but everybody agrees, Democrats and Republicans, we've got more than 12 months worth of problems. So we try to jam a lot into that session. The biggest thing I learned in terms of something that inspired me and a triumphant moment was we worked on this bill to address the student loan crisis. A few other legislators, Senator Kasser and I and Senator Maroney, we had this bill that essentially said to any business, if you hire a recent graduate and you help them pay off their student loans, well, then we will give you a break in your corporate taxes. The businesses loved it because it cut taxes. The young people loved it because it helped make Connecticut more affordable, and it addressed the fact that we had the highest student loan debt per capita in the country. The bill passed almost unanimously in the Senate. Both sides of the aisle loved it, but I couldn't get it called for a vote in the House of Representatives. And of course it has to pass both before it reaches the governor's desk. Couldn't get it called for a vote. Days went by, couldn't get it called for a vote. So we enlisted the help of the Connecticut Realtors. And the Realtors are a well-organized network, and there's a Realtor in every community, and at least one, usually many more. What the Realtors did is just a few of them in every town across Connecticut picked up the phone, and they called their state representative and said, hey, we really want you to do something about this student loan tax credit. Why? Because the Realtors found that on average, student loan debt delays the purchase of a first home in Connecticut by 7 years. So if we help people pay off their student loans, they can buy homes that much faster. What was so cool is that I was standing in the House of Representatives when this happened. All of a sudden, state representatives started to get phone calls, and they were, getting text messages, getting emails. Realtors in their communities, maybe 4, 5, 6 realtors were reaching out. And all of a sudden, they shifted their attention, and the bill became a top priority. In fact, we couldn't sign up co-sponsors fast enough. The bill was called for a vote the next day. The next day, it was signed into law by the governor. And it's a long story, but I tell it because it reminds us all that we have enormous power if we just bother to pick up the phone and to call our state representatives. I know a lot of people who frankly waste their time calling Mitch McConnell's office and leaving a message with some intern that they're so angry at what the Senate's doing. That's not going to make a difference. The senator from Kentucky doesn't care about what the voters in Connecticut think. But if you pick up the phone tomorrow and you call your state representative, well, then that person is probably going to actually take the time to talk to you, to hear your perspective, and it might actually shift their priorities for that day. So we've got a lot of power if we choose to use it. And rather than wasting time calling Washington, get involved on the state level because you really can make a difference. That's how we pass that student loan tax credit.
I mean, that gives me so much hope to to know that there is a bottom-up grassroots rock-face solution. I made the calls as well regarding the latest Supreme Court nomination, but I didn't feel like I had a voice. I got the autoresponders, and I got all, everything was checked. It was like a checklist, but I didn't feel, even with all the advertising on television, I didn't feel like anything was going to change, and it didn't, because I guess there is so much legacy and incumbency at the top and top down, but bottom up looks like there is hope, and I certainly feel that in talking to you.
Well, I really think that state governments are going to be our refuge for the next few years, given that we have a super majority of conservative justices. They are coming to take away affordable access to healthcare. They are coming to take away reproductive health and freedom, LGBTQ equality, gun violence prevention laws, environmental protections, voting rights. States are going to have to step up to the plate and be the first line of defense. So a lot of people who are very familiar with advocating in Washington are going to have to sort of reorient, figure out who your state representative and who your state senator are. Get involved. Make sure that they always support a woman's right to choose. Make sure that they support access to affordable health care and LGBTQ equality and all those other important issues, because we're going to be a firewall or a blue wall or a first line of defense. Pick your metaphor. It's going to be state governments that are increasingly important in a post-Amy Coney Barrett confirmation world.
Okay, you only said one thing that I completely disagreed with there, which is you said if I get elected, and I think what you meant to say was when, not if. So let me just correct you there very quickly. But
fingers crossed. I'm not jinxing it. Knocking on wood as you speak.
Well, as we would say in South Africa, local is lekker. And my Dutch friends would probably, and Belgians would understand that as well. Local is lekker. But what a great message about grassroots, rock face, getting involved, bottom up, local trickles up as opposed to the trickle down effect of national, that top down approach. And by the way, Jan, you asked a question about complexity. I think I can kind of answer it as well, because you saw how Will was able to take something and be a part of something that was quite complex and solve a problem, be a problem solver. So I don't think that it's just Tom Morris who's in trouble in terms of his day job as a philosopher. I think my job is in trouble as a marketer, because the creative thinking, the lateral thinking of getting the realtors involved was a really smart way to basically solve a problem. So how do you like this new format, guys? I've got to, Bob Farnham says he loves this new format, but I got to tell you, it feels a little weird for me, because I feel a bit lonely because I'm actually not with my guest right now, even though I did get to clearly sit down with him. I also made a little mistake because of the software I use, StreamYard. You can only, the reason why, necessity is the mother of invention. The reason why you have these in little segments is because you can't do more than a 5-minute clip. And so I went and cut everything into 5-minute bites. But then I realized I could have just uploaded it to YouTube and streamed the whole thing live. But I must say, I do kind of like the format as well. Ted Rubin is here. He said, love the background, buddy. Well, then, you'll probably like my two pals over here as well. So there you go. And Scott Monty said, the cliche is true. All politics are local, or is local as well. So I'm glad you enjoy that. I should say one more thing, which is Will isn't going to be on the after show, but I will be. And we're going to do a 1-hour after show with a lot of our regulars. Let's have a respectful conversation. Let's have a conversation about hope, positivity, and optimism. And I'll keep that whole thing going for about an hour as well. So yeah, I love all the commentary. If you like the format, then you can volunteer to actually cut it up and do all the editing, because I've had it. I'm up to I'm up to here with all the work that I have to do on the show. But it's not even a labor of love. It is just love. All right. Well, let's get it. We have 3 segments left, and this one kind of shifts to Will's re-election, talking to him about what his 3 top priorities are. And then I ask him this question about, what are we going to do the day after the election? What are we going to do when we, how are we going to counter this fatigue, this hangover, this exhaustion, the fact that we just want to walk away from all of this. So here's what he said. What were your 3 top issues going into this election for you personally in that, local state capacity?
Well, first and foremost, it was keeping our community healthy in the face of just federal inaction on COVID-19. There was a stimulus package that was tremendously helpful, but in terms of supplying PPE to our frontline workers, Connecticut had to step up to the plate and make sure that we shifted supply chains so that we're producing gowns and masks and goggles and all those other important things here in Connecticut, that we didn't have to rely on the federal supply. Making sure that we could reopen schools in a manner that was safe, not just for students, but also for faculty. COVID-19 has been issues number 1, 2, and 3 in this campaign. And one thing that I'm really proud that our team did at the start of this virus is it didn't feel appropriate to campaign in March and in April and in May even. So what we decided to do is we harnessed all these young people who had signed up to intern and volunteer, and we asked them to call seniors and to check in on those folks in their community who might be isolated, to see if they needed groceries delivered or medication picked up. I drove up to Bethel to deliver one gentleman a cane who was having trouble moving around. We made 10,000 of those phone calls, and that really it warms my heart. If whether we win or lose, that's probably my favorite thing that we accomplished in the course of this campaign. Second top priority for me is going to be transportation improvements. Right now a lot of people are working from home, but in the long term, the economic vitality of southwestern Connecticut is so intimately tied to our ability to commute to and from Manhattan. It's tied to our ability to get to and from work without sitting in hours of traffic every day. Businesses don't want to open up here if their employees can't get to and from their desk efficiently. So I'm going to keep fighting for transportation improvements. I did a lot of that in my first term, and I'm lucky enough to get a second. That's going to be a top priority. And finally, I chair the Higher Education Committee, and I'm really concerned about the fact that we see declining enrollment in community colleges at the very moment when we need college graduates more than ever. 70% of jobs in Connecticut are going to require some degree beyond a high school diploma by 2025. We're nowhere near meeting that goal. We've got to meet the challenges and the opportunities of a 21st century workforce by making sure that college is actually affordable. So fighting for debt-free community college, fighting for student loan relief, fighting to make this state affordable after you graduate so you can buy your first home or start your small business. Those are really important issues for me, not just as somebody who represents the 26th district, but as someone who's the youngest member of the General Assembly. I think that's what my generation really wants to see out of their state government.
One of the fears that I have is that there's going to be a tremendous election burnout. We're so tired and exhausted by the rhetoric, by the vitriol, by the, all of these continuous news, cable news channels. There is a concept called jobs to be done. There's work that has to be done. So I guess it's a 2-part question, which is how do we counter and fight this burnout, this exhaustion, the ability to just say, I don't want any politics in my life or any of this stuff in my life anymore. And then if we are able to get beyond that, what should we be doing? What is the first step or the next step that we citizens should be taking the day after the election?
Well, there's something so much more important than just winning, right? A lot of people say, oh, I can't wait to sleep in on November 4th. And I hear you. Believe me, I'm going to take a day myself. But then on Thursday, I'm going to get up and get to work, whether that's as your state senator or just as your neighbor, because there's a lot to do in order to not only rebuild unity, but actually advance the ideas that we've been talking about for months. We've been talking about affordable healthcare for months now on the campaign trail. We've been talking about climate change and how we can lead in the state of Connecticut in standing up to powerful interests and supporting renewable energy. We can actually put in place proven policies that will improve our transportation network, make sure that our trains are faster than they were 50 years ago, not slower. But right now, all we're doing is talking. There's so much more to do than just win this election. We've got to wake up the next morning, roll up our sleeves, and get to work, because that's what this is all about. It's not about proving who's right and who's wrong. It's about getting an opportunity to actually make a difference and implement these policies that matter so much to our community. So, for those who are feeling a little bit of fatigue, I get it. Take Wednesday off, sleep in, have a drink. But on Thursday, let's get ready to work. Whether you're on the winning side or the losing side, we're facing a historic crisis for small businesses, for students, for families, and of course for our healthcare system. We're all going to need to be engaged in fixing it.
I'll just do that. Rini makes a comment that there is a disconnect between education and employment. And Tom says, Will Haskell represents the insight from Aristotle that politics is about how best to live well together along all the dimensions of modern life: health, transportation, debt, education, and so on. I just loved his response, that there's more to life than winning, right? Whether you are a Charlie Sheen or whether you are Donald Trump, this is about jobs to be done. This is about work that has to be accomplished. And I just love how he said, whether I'm your neighbor or your state senator, and I sure as hell hope he is our state senator, we've got to get to work. So that was a real, I thought, Tom says, I want this guy to be my state senator. Well, he can be. All you have to do, Tom, is move to Connecticut. It's about as simple as that. Well, we have 2 segments left. And I had to ask him a question about technology and about innovation. I mean, if AOC could be on Twitch, well, then what was Will doing? And what could be done in terms of injecting technology, digital, social media, innovation, the startup life into politics, into electioneering, into voting? And here's what he had to say. And I'm always interested in seeing how technology has transformed the whole process. I would love for you to talk briefly in terms of what that road ahead looks like to be able to bring secure mobile, or just the ability to make sure that everyone who wants to vote can vote.
Well, we've got a lot of work to do in this area. Connecticut gets some credit as being a progressive state, and in many ways that's true. But one area where we're very severely outdated and stuck in the past is on our voting procedures. We're one of only 10 states in the country that doesn't offer early voting. That means you've got one Tuesday in November. God forbid you're a single working parent or a commuter or a student or somebody with disabilities. It's far too challenging to cast your ballot. And by the way, here's something I've fought for that's just common sense. In most other states, you can apply for an absentee ballot online. It takes 2 seconds. You just type in your information and an absentee ballot is sent to you. In Connecticut, you've got to actually print out a form, send it in to your town clerk, and then you get your ballot back. But, when I was in college, I didn't exactly have stamps and envelopes lying around. So it's a hassle and it's an antiquated system. There's a lot we can do to make our voting system more accessible. And I'm proud that in the midst of a pandemic, Connecticut stepped up to the plate. We returned to the legislature in a special session. We made sure that this year only, everyone was eligible for an absentee ballot. And more importantly, we sent out applications automatically to every registered voter. And as a result, we've seen turnout has gone through the roof. The postage was prepaid. You didn't have to go out and buy an envelope. And all of a sudden, people, when you give them the option to participate in a manner that's convenient for them, they do so. And we've seen turnout absolutely climb. We've got to continue that progress, not just during a pandemic, but always. We've got to bring early voting to Connecticut. Millions of people have voted already across the country, and none of them live in Connecticut because of our antiquated system. We don't have early voting in this state, even though Texas and West Virginia and plenty of other Republican states do. I'm excited about the idea of using more technology. Of course, I'm cautious, as anybody would be who's lived through the 2016 election. The ability of foreign governments to interfere using technology is really a frightening thing. So we'd have to make sure that it was something that was very secure. And frankly, I feel like we're so far away from that still, given the fact that we can't even expand access to absentee ballots. We can't even bring early voting to this state. I think we're a long way off from remote voting. But I do think that allowing absentee ballot requests to come through the internet is a really important step forward. I can't tell you how many friends my age have texted me saying, I love an absentee ballot, but I don't have a stamp,
Yeah, and other friends probably saying, what is a stamp?
Yes.
Which is, is it the thing that comes on the CD? I'm not really sure what. I found out that it is legal. First of all, I went through the whole process, and it worked, at least in terms of being sent the absentee ballot. Second of all, I found out that it is legal in Connecticut to be able to take a selfie of your ballot and share it. That's correct, right?
Absolutely. Please do, because it encourages and it reminds your friends to vote. So take pictures with your ballot. It's a
okay, good, because I'm about to do that. There I am with my ballot.
You did not break the law. Hey, I see my name on there. Thank you very much.
And as you can see, up and down the line, I happen to vote Democrat. So your vote was secure. You know, AOC was on Twitch. You're on Corona TV streaming. What kind of cool things have you seen in terms of leveraging technology or just even marketing tactics that have maybe got your attention and you think engage some of the younger voters?
You know, I'm a big fan of AOC. One thing that I really admire that she does is she brings her followers on Instagram behind the scenes looks of what it means and what it looks like to be a member of Congress. Most people don't know who their state senator is. Many people don't even know that there is such a thing as a state senate. So I tried to do the same thing, of course, with a few million fewer followers. Letting people know, here's what it looks like to introduce a law. Here's how you vote. Here's the yay and the nay button. Here's what it looks like to stay up all night because of a filibuster. Here's the couch in my office where I sleep. Just sort of inside look on the day-to-day of being a state senator. I think that it's so cool that AOC has set that example for giving folks a sort of moment-by-moment recap. And I try to do the same thing on my Instagram account.
So what I liked about his response was that it wasn't futuristic. It wasn't over the top. He was basically saying, yeah, of course, we'd like to speed up and people would like to, talk about what that acceleration looks like. But first, let's get up to speed. First, let's make sure, not dissimilar to what Rini and I discussed yesterday, which is we should begin with the lowest common denominator. We should lift up the person who is the most disenfranchised or struggling the most, who doesn't have the access. And that's how, again, it's another bottom-up approach, if you think about it. The other thing when he spoke about AOC was this idea of access. So being able to open up the kimono, let people into the sausage factory, allow the ability for us to demystify as opposed to the mystification. And opacity versus transparency is clearly a best practice and a common thread and something that we should be thinking about. Well, we're getting to our final segment, and the final segment is a little bit of fun as well. I ask him questions trying to see if I can catch him out to see how politically correct and politically savvy he is. And one of those questions is to try and get a sense of his political, his top political aspirations. Here's what he had to say. Two final questions, and then we're going to remind people how they can vote and what they should be doing immediately after this interview finishes. And this is going to test your mettle to see how politically savvy you are. Although I have to tell you, from everything you've said to me up until now, I feel like the future is in very, very good, capable hands. You've met lots of politicians over the years. Who's the most impressive politician that you've come into contact with?
I have to tell you, I'm a big fan of Mayor Pete Buttigieg. There's some wonderful people I've had the opportunity of meeting, but Mayor Pete, fundamentally, it doesn't strike me as a politician so much as a policy wonk. He really cares about the nitty-gritty details, and we need more people like that in politics. So I was really excited to not only meet him, but actually drive up to New Hampshire on the night that he did so well in that primary. And I think we'll see some amazing things from him in the future.
You see, and this shows you how wrong I was. I was thinking you were going to say something, well, they're all impressive in different capacities, but
they are.
So the final question is, you are, I will call you the boy wonder, 24 years old, I think. And I cannot emphasize this enough, that I have so much hope for our future after spending this time with you. I was feeling a little down this morning. I was feeling overwhelmed, almost a little bit suffocated by the enormity of the task. But the enthusiasm, the optimism, Corona TV is all about hope, positivity, and optimism. It may as well be called Haskell TV as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm so honored to have spent this time with you, and I couldn't imagine a more exciting time to be talking about voting, and more importantly, talking about the future than on Election Day of 2020. So really,
isn't it great?
Time.
Well, before I give you one more chance to tell people what they should be doing right now, your final test is going to be a simple one. Political aspirations. Will you be making a run for president of the United States? And can you break the news on Corona TV right now?
Well, I've got to win re-election to the state senate. That's in my short-term goal. And honestly, running for office is wonderful, but it's also it is something that is all-consuming. And I think that there should probably be a time in my life where I spend a little bit more time with my girlfriend. So I don't know what the future holds, but I love this job. I want to keep doing it for a few more years. And who knows after that? I guess anything's possible, but I'll tell you, there's nowhere I'd rather be than in the state government right now, because while Washington is talking about problems, Hartford is actually solving them. And I find that to be so exciting every day.
The perfect answer. You passed both tests with flying colors. So State Senator Will Haskell, what should people be doing? Again, remind them what to do right now after watching this conclusion of the interview.
All right, stand up right now, get in your car, and go to your local polling place. If you don't know where it is and you live here in Connecticut, go to myvote.ct.gov. You can make sure that you're registered. If you already voted absentee, you can make sure that ballot was received. It'll tell you exactly where your polling location is, myvote.ct.gov. If you're watching from outside of Connecticut, just go to iwillvote.com. All the information you need about your state, how to register, how to make sure that your vote is counted in this election. Like I said, we're going to be telling the story of November 3rd, 2020 for many, many years to come. Don't wake up tomorrow with any regrets. Let's get this done. Let's win so that we can actually then begin the important work of rebuilding this country.
I want to thank you so much again for taking the time. I know your schedule is full and busy. I will get the word out. And, we have a little Zoom after show, and we have one, we call him our resident conservative. I think you know him personally. And he said, please send my best to Will Haskell and let him know that this is a Republican, a lifelong Republican, that I will be voting for him. And I think, as you said, we started off this interview talking about substance, talking about content, I guess talking about heart. You have it regardless of your political party and your leanings and your affiliations. You know, the old line, which is choose your country over your party. But in this case, I feel like I might have chosen both with you. So thank you again for coming in, Will.
Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to keeping in touch. Let's get together and maybe we can do a recap someday. But thank you for having me.
For sure. It was my pleasure. Well, I'm going to have to get Senator-elect Haskell to come back to the show to maybe visit our Zoom after show. I hope you took away from that interview certainly what I did, and watching it the second time round, maybe the third time round, because I was editing it, was even better. It just gets better, and it fills me, as I was saying, with tremendous hope that the future looks bright as long as we place that future in the hands of the youth, as opposed to people that have been there for decades upon decades. Tom says, Mayor Pete and Will Haskell are cut from the same high quality political cloth. I agree. And he's made such an impression on Tom that Tom says he's calling a realtor because, I guess he's moving to Connecticut, which is awesome. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. I appreciate your comments and your engagement. I would agree with you as well. It was a show that just filled me with happiness, and I think that's the most important thing. Well, for all of you, if you are in Connecticut, just to remind you, and you don't know what to do or how to do it, you can apparently still register to vote and vote today. Go to myvote.ct.gov. And in the rest of the country, iwillvote.com. And if you're in the rest of the world, stay tuned. Hopefully there is an America tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. And a Corona TV as well will be here to make sure that we share the news with you. So there is nothing that is left to be done except to tell you to come and hang out now with myself and Tom and whoever else is watching today on our Zoom after show, bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. This is probably one of the easiest endorsements that Mr. Chuck Norris has ever had to give.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you for watching Corona TV with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. Corona TV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/Corona TV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at CoronaTV.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text Corona TV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.